The stench hits you first. Step into Cheapside, London, 1348. Your boots sink into a slurry of horse dung, rotting vegetables and human waste that flows down the centre channel like a putrid river. The air burns your nostrils, urine from the tanner's workshop, mixing with the sweet decay of meat scraps thrown from butcher stalls above. You pull your cloak over your mouth, but the smell seeps through wool, through skin, into your lungs. This isn't just dirty. This is a world where your floor crawls with fleas, where your drinking water carries the runoff from latrines, where your neighbour's cough in the morning means they'll be dead by evening. You think you understand filth, but medieval England during the Black Death exists in a realm of contamination that would kill you within days. The plague hasn't even reached this street yet, but every breath you take, every surface you touch, every flea that leaps from the rushes beneath your feet is already preparing your body for death. The people walking past you, the baker balancing bread on his head, the merchant's wife lifting her hem above the muck. They've survived here for decades. Their bodies are ecosystems you couldn't imagine. Their daily routines navigate dangers you can't see. Thomas the baker wakes before dawn on straw that hasn't been changed since winter. The rushes covering his floor squelch under his feet. Months of accumulated grease, spilled ale, chicken droppings, and the sweet dampness of rot. He doesn't notice the fleas anymore. They've lived on his body so long they feel like part of his skin. His wife Agnes rises beside him, her linen shift grey with sweat and grime. This single garment is their most precious possession. Not gold, not land, but clean cloth next to skin. She'll wash it in 3 weeks, maybe 4, when the smell becomes unbearable even to her. Until then, this thin barrier of fabric is what keeps the fleas in her woolen dress from dining directly on her blood. Thomas steps outside into the kennel, the central gutter that serves as London's circulatory system. The waste from 100 households flows past his door in a brown stream thick enough to support the rats that feast there. He's careful where he places his feet, not from disgust, but from practice. The cobbler's wife slipped last month and cut her hand on a shard of pottery. The wound festered green within days. Agnes draws water from the communal well at the corner, the same well that receives runoff from the latrines built over the Thames, the same Thames where the tanners dump their chemical brews of feces and urine used to cure leather. She doesn't boil it. Fuel costs money they don't have. She drinks it brown and prays it won't bring the bloody flux that killed the miller's son. Their breakfast is bread baked on Thomas's stone oven and eaten with unwashed hands. Agnes wipes her fingers on her dress, adding another layer to the stains that map months of meals. Thomas chews, carefully. His back teeth ache from abscesses that flare whenever he bites down hard. The grit from stone-ground flour has worn his molars to stumps. By sunrise, they've already exposed themselves to contaminated water, flea-borne pathogens, and bacterial infections that would hospitalize a modern person. This is their normal Tuesday. They've been doing this for 37 years. Their bodies carry immunities built through constant low-level poisoning. The fleas in their floor rushes belong to the species Xenosilla chiopes. They've been feeding on the blood of Thomas's family, the rats in his walls, and the neighbour's cat. Last week, some of those rats started dying from a disease that makes their blood thick with bacteria. The fleas don't know they're carrying death. They just know they're hungry. Agnes sweeps the old rushes toward the door, pushing months of organic debris into the street. Underneath, the packed earth floor is black with moisture and alive with movement. She spreads fresh straw over the old, creating new layers in an archaeological record of contamination. Thomas splits wood for his oven, each swing of his axe stirring the air in his workshop. Flour dust mixes with smoke, with the particles of mould growing on stored grain, with microscopic fragments of everything that has lived and died in this space. He breathes it all. Margaret the tanner's wife owns something worth more than silver, 3 linen shifts. While Agnes counts weeks between washing, Margaret changes her undergarment every few days. This isn't vanity, it's survival armour against the creatures that treat human bodies as feeding grounds. She strips off yesterday's shift, already yellowed with sweat despite 2 days of wear. The fabric has done its job, wicking moisture and skin oils away from her flesh, starving the fleas that nest in her woolen outer dress. This thin barrier means the difference between dozens of flea bites and hundreds. In a world where those bites carry death, clean linen is currency. Margaret's husband John works ankle-deep in vats of piss and shit. Tanning leather requires urine for its ammonia, fresh dung for its enzymes. His hands are chemical burns wrapped around bone, his fingernails permanently stained brown from the caustic brews that transform hide into usable leather. He comes home reeking of decay, his clothes saturated with compounds that would strip paint. She washes his hands with soap, actual soap, made from animal fat and ash, costing what Thomas the baker earns in 3 days. The lye burns away layers of contamination, but it also burns away skin. John's palms are raw landscapes of cracked flesh that never fully heal. Clean hands are wounded hands in 1348. Their water comes from the same poisoned well as Thomas's, but Margaret boils it first. She knows the connection between brackish water and the gut-twisting sickness that empties bowels in bloody streams. She doesn't understand bacteria, but she understands cause and effect. Hot water kills something. She doesn't know what. Margaret scrubs her teeth with a cloth dipped in salt, grinding away the film that coats them each morning. Her breath still reeks. Everyone's does, but the salt draws out some of the corruption. The wealthy chew expensive herbs like mint and fennel. The poor make do with whatever grows wild or simply accept that their mouth tastes like the inside of a tomb. Her floor rushes get changed weekly, not monthly. Fresh straw means fewer fleas, which means less blood loss, less disease, less chance of the mysterious swellings that have begun appearing in the armpits of families across London. She can afford this frequency because John's trade brings good money. Death always needs leather. When Margaret visits the market, other women step aside, not from respect, but from revulsion. The chemical stench of the tannery clings to everything she touches. Her husband's profession marks their family as necessary, but contaminated. They handle the substances too foul for others to touch, transforming corruption into something useful. She buys expensive white bread instead of the brown loaves that fill poor stomachs. The fine flour contains less grit, spares her teeth the grinding erosion that ages mouths decades beyond their years. Her molars still ache, but they haven't crumbled to fragments like Thomas's. Margaret's wealth buys her extra days of life through marginally better hygiene. Cleaner clothes, stronger soap, fresher rushes, small advantages that compound into survival when plague arrives seeking the weakest bodies. Her 3 linen shifts aren't luxury. They're fortress walls built one thread at a time against an enemy she can't see but somehow knows is coming. The morning Thomas finds 3 dead rats in his grain bin, the air itself becomes the enemy. Their bodies lie twisted, black blood crusted around their mouths, bellies swollen tight as wineskins. He carries them to the midden heap behind his shop, but the smell stays on his hands. Sweet corruption that soap can't wash away. Agnes burns juniper branches in their main room, filling the house with acrid smoke she believes will purify the poisoned air. The scent makes her eyes water, but weeping feels safer than breathing freely. According to Master Geoffrey the physician, corrupt vapours seep through windows, under doors, between the gaps in wall timbers. Clean air requires constant vigilance. The parish bells ring more frequently now, not for prayers but for purification. Bronze voices that shatter the stagnant atmosphere where death breeds. Agnes counts the tolls. 7 times in the morning to break apart the night's accumulated corruption. She opens her shutters only when the bells ring, trusting their sacred sound to cleanse whatever drifts in. Margaret's husband John comes home speaking of strange sights at the tan yard. 2 of his fellow workers collapsed yesterday, clutching their groins, where swellings had erupted overnight. Hard lumps the size of eggs that turned black before the men died screaming. The other tanners whisper of God's judgment, but John smells something else, the same sweet stench that rises from hides left too long in the sun. Agnes holds a nosegay of herbs pressed tight against her nose whenever she ventures outside. Rosemary, thyme, whatever grows in the monastery garden and cost precious pennies. The aromatic oils burn her nostrils, but burning feels like protection. Her neighbour tried mint leaves and died within 3 days, so Agnes switches to wormwood despite its bitter reek. The kennel outside Thomas's door no longer flows. The men who carted away night soil have stopped coming, some dead, others fled to countryside that might harbour cleaner air. Waste accumulates in brown hills that buzz with flies. Each fly carries the corruption from house to house. Also, Master Geoffrey explains when he passes through the quarter with herbs stuffed in his long-beaked mask. Margaret pays double for candles blessed by priests, burning them continuously to sanctify the air inside her home. The smoke stings worse than juniper, but blessed smoke carries prayers directly to heaven. She believes the flames consume whatever poison drifts through her walls. The wax costs more than meat, but meat won't save her from air gone septic. Thomas boards up his shop's rear window, the one facing the midden where more rats appear daily, their corpses adding layers to the putrid archaeology of death. Sealed rooms feel safer than ventilation. He doesn't know that trapped air grows thick with the breath of fleas breeding in his floor rushes, that his barricade locks the real danger inside with his family. Agnes boils water with costly cinnamon bark, creating steam she believes will carry purification into her lungs. She breathes the scalding vapours until her throat burns, trusting pain as evidence of the poison being driven out. The spice empties, their savings, but silver means nothing if the air itself has turned lethal. The smell changes everything. What once felt merely foul, the daily stench of waste and decay, now carries the weight of cosmic threat. Every breath becomes a gamble. The familiar reek of the tannery, the sharp ammonia of latrines, the sweet rot of the midden heap, all transform into harbingers of doom that seep through skin and settle in souls. Margaret clutches her youngest child closer when stepping outside, pressing his face against her shoulder so he won't breathe the corruption directly. She doesn't know that her woolen dress harbours the same fleas that killed the rats, that proximity offers no protection from enemies too small to see. The air tastes different now, metal and flowers and something underneath that makes saliva thick and bitter. Death has its own flavour, and once you learn to recognise it, you taste it everywhere. Margaret stands outside her daughter's door with a bowl of hot water and clean rags, listening to the laboured breathing that started 3 days ago. Mary's fever broke this morning, but the swelling under her left arm has grown hard, as stone and black around the edges. The choice facing Margaret isn't medical, it's mathematical. Enter that room and die with her daughter, or abandon her to save the 3 children who still draw healthy breath. She sets down the bowl and backs away. The water grows cold on the floor. John burns everything they own that carries scent. Their good wool blankets, Mary's favourite dress, even the rushes from her sleeping area, all fed to flames in their courtyard, while neighbours watch from shuttered windows. He believes the corruption lives in fabric, that cloth holds the poisoned vapours like a sponge holds water. Each item crackles and releases smoke that makes his eyes stream, but tears feel like purification. Master Geoffrey arrives wearing his leather beak stuffed with aromatic herbs, the pointed mask making him look like a monstrous bird. He bleeds Mary through a small cut in her wrist, letting the corrupted humours drain into a bronze bowl. The blood runs darker than it should, thick with whatever poison the bad air planted in her body. He doesn't touch her directly. Corruption passes through skin, he explains, seeping from the sick into the healthy through mere contact. Thomas burns green wood in his oven, creating thick smoke he believes will cleanse the air throughout his shop. The acrid clouds make breathing painful, but pain means the purification is working. His eyes weep constantly from the irritation, but he interprets the tears as his body expelling the corruption that threatens to take root in his flesh. The smoke doesn't know that the fleas in his floor rushes remain untouched, still feeding, still breeding, still carrying the real enemy between rat and human. Agnes forces herself to drink wine mixed with crushed pearls, an expensive remedy that scrapes her throat raw, but supposedly neutralizes internal corruption before it can spread through her blood. The mixture tastes like chalk and regret, but the merchant who sold it swore the pearl's purity would drive out any poison that had already entered her body. She doesn't know that salvation can't be swallowed, that the danger lives in creatures too small for pearls to touch. John seals the cracks around his windows with beeswax and strips of leather, creating an airtight barrier against the corrupted atmosphere outside. His family breathes the same air over and over, growing dizzy from the lack of fresh circulation, but dizziness feels safer than death. The sealed room grows thick with their exhalations, and the gases rising from floor rushes that haven't been changed since the dying began. Margaret pays the priest double to bless their house with holy water, sprinkling consecrated droplets in every corner where corruption might hide. Ritual. Eager to escape before the ritual. Eager to escape before the family's corruption spreads to his own body. Thomas crushes expensive imported ginger between his teeth, filling his mouth with burning spice that makes his tongue numb. The pain convinces him that something powerful is happening inside his body, that the ginger's fire is burning away whatever seeds of death the bad air planted in his flesh. He chews until his gums bleed, trusting blood as evidence that the corruption is being driven out through his saliva. Agnes abandons her weekly trip to market, too terrified of the concentrated corruption that hangs over crowds of people breathing the same poisoned air. She eats only what Thomas brings home, trusting his judgment about which foods might carry less contamination. Their diet shrinks to bread and whatever vegetables appear least, touched by the miasma that transforms everything wholesome into vehicles for death. The family next door boards up Mary's window from the outside, sealing her inside to prevent her corruption from spreading to their children. Margaret can hear her daughter calling for water, but opening that door means opening a pathway for death to flow from the sick room into the healthy spaces where her other children sleep. She sits with her back against the sealed door, close enough to hear Mary's voice but separated by wood that feels thinner than breath. John builds a fire in their courtyard and tends it continuously, believing the flames consume the poisoned vapours before they can settle in his family's lungs. The smoke stings their eyes and makes their throats roar, but burning air feels cleaner than still air. He doesn't sleep. Someone must feed the flames through the dangerous hours of darkness, when corruption grows strongest and seeps most easily through walls that can't completely seal. Out death. Margaret wakes to silence from Mary's room. No laboured breathing, no calls for water, just the terrible quiet that means another choice has been made for her. She presses her ear against the sealed door and hears nothing except the scratching of rats in the walls. Her daughter died alone while Margaret sat 3 feet away, separated by wood and terror. John removes the planks they nailed across Mary's window, but only to push her body through the opening into the street below. He won't enter the room where death has fed, won't breathe air that a dying girl exhaled for 3 days. Mary lands in the kennel with a splash, her nightgown spreading around her like pale wings in the brown water. The cart that used to collect bodies stopped coming last week. Agnes watches her neighbour Thomas nail boards across his own door from the inside. His youngest son developed the telltale swellings yesterday, which means the whole family must be sealed away to prevent the corruption from spreading. She can hear them moving around inside, still alive, still hoping, but the healthy families on Cheapside have voted. The boards stay until the sounds stop. The priest refuses to enter houses where the sick are dying. Too many of his brothers have caught the corruption while administering last rites, their bodies discovered days later in rooms that reeked of sanctified death. He shouts prayers through windows instead, offering absolution to souls he won't approach closely enough to touch. God understands the need for distance when death seeps through breath itself. Margaret burns Mary's straw mattress in their courtyard, but the smoke carries something worse than corruption. It carries memory. The sweet smell of her daughter's hair, the familiar scent of the herbs she kept under her pillow, all transformed into grey ash that settles on everything and won't wash away. Purification feels like erasure, but erasure feels like survival. Thomas's wife can be heard weeping. Through the boards that imprison her family, she begs for someone to bring water, to carry away waste, to show mercy to her healthy children who are trapped with the dying. The neighbours discuss her pleas in whispers. Showing mercy to the clean means catching corruption from the sick. Love has become a luxury that kills those who practice it. The healthy families remaining on Cheapside develop new rules. Don't touch anything a sick person has breathed on. Don't share tools. Don't borrow grain. Don't stand downwind from houses where the dying live. Charity becomes suicide when caring for neighbours means absorbing their contamination into your own body. community dissolves into isolated cells of terrified survival. John pays men double wages to carry Mary's body from the kennel to the plague pit outside London's walls. They wrap her in sheets soaked with vinegar, believing the acid will neutralise whatever corruption still clings to her flesh. The men work quickly, breathing through cloth masks, trying not to let death settle in their lungs while they handle its victims. Even the dead require protection from the living. Agnes discovers that survival demands a mathematics of abandonment. Help the sick and die with them. Touch the contaminated and become contaminated. Breathe the same air as the dying and join them in the pit outside the walls. She learns to calculate the cost of every kindness, to weigh compassion against the probability of living long enough to practice it again. The moral fabric of London frays like cloth left too long in caustic lie. Parents abandon children, spouses flee partners. The basic human act of caring for the helpless transforms into an act of suicide that no one can afford to perform. The city's heart stops beating, not from plague, but from the fear that makes people stop touching each other long enough to remember why they wanted to live. You survived, through imagination, through distance, through the luxury of knowing what they couldn't, that fleas carried death, not air. The people who walk these streets develop something different, the beginning of an understanding that survival might depend on the space between bodies. Though they blamed the wrong enemy, their terror taught them that disease and filth were connected in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. The seeds of modern hygiene were planted not in knowledge, but in the desperate recognition that cleanliness, however they understood it, offered the only barrier against invisible death.